¿Está listo? You ready? Good morning. Thank you for joining us. You are watching KUHS The Stream on Washington. This is the Boost, the Weekend Boost, and I am your host, Paul Lane, and the author of The Caregiver's Handbook, a self-help love story. Guys, I'm so grateful to have you all on the show and following us, and those of you who have been following us for a long time know that I like to talk about Calma every week. Calma is my favorite cause. I just believe so much in what Calma does for the community, for Latino Chicano people in the Colorado and nationwide area. And I always talk about the anthology, the Calma anthology, Ramas y Raíces, Branches and Roots. Guys, this book runs $20. It's a great collection of fantastic short stories, poetry, essays from community leaders in the Denver area. I have 2 poems in this book, and I'm really proud of those. So please get a copy of this book. Reach out to us at the station. We'd like to get a copy of this into your hands. Also, as I talk about every show, I'm going to talk about it again. In history, what you learned in school is not the history that was really happening, man. A People's History of the United States by Howard Zinn is a great resource. It's a fantastic way for you to learn and see exactly what your roots in history are. Find out about really what the United States government is all about and how it affects you and what you can do to make it a better place. Guys, Jeanette Angel was a guest on my show a couple of months back, and Jeanette has become a friend of mine and my wife's, and she's actually referred me to a couple of great guests that have been on the show, and I'm going to just go ahead and put her book out there, Milk or Mascara. This is a poetry book that is really a very good read, and I'll tell you the biggest thing I really got out of this book is when she was writing the book, she was very poor and she was in a bad place, and she was at the store, and she had to make a choice between milk or mascara. And she chose milk. But you know what? It's a great, fantastic book. You can also get this on Amazon. I believe it's available in Barnes & Noble bookstores. So please pick up a copy of this book. Jeanette Angel is a really great author, and she has some good stuff to share with you. Before I get started, I just want to do a shout out to my mama. She would have been 95 years old today. And Benita Trujillo Sanchez, I love you, Mom. I love you. And this morning I lost a brother-in-law, Leroy Medina. He's been fighting lung cancer, and this morning he breathed his last breath, and I just want to say a shout out to his family. Isabel, my sister-in-law, I love you, and you know we're always here for you. I'm going to go ahead and read a couple of poems that I wrote this week. I've been really inspired, and so I'm going to read a couple of poems that I wrote to you. And the first one I'm going to read is What Will They Say? 100 years from now, what will they say? That the world agreed to throw a population away? Will they tell stories of genocide, ethnic cleansing, or worse? What did those people do to deserve such a curse? Had we dehumanized them so that the world didn't care? Or were we bamboozled to think that we could just take their share? What about the innocent, the elders, the young? Will they tell of the grief and the songs that were sung? Will there be a museum, a statue, or wall? Will humanity ever make sense of it all? Will the survivors have guilt for not being killed, with more than limbs missing and more than blood spilled? Will they ever forgive us? Will it be forgotten in time? Will the ICC and the ICJ and the UN finally charge for those crimes? Were they crimes against humanity, ethnic cleansing, and hate? The evil we saw was just not up for debate. Will the Palestinians ever be able to heal? If you don't take time to look, then you won't have to feel. I hope in 100 years we can all look back and admit the humanity we all clearly lack. I'm not going to say any more about that. Please remember the people in Palestine. Remember the genocide that can't be denied. I wrote this poem. My cousin, who's a curandera, sent me this video of my ancestors and the native people of America And I was inspired to write this short poem, and it's not too short, but I'm going to read it anyway. Men shouldn't cry at the death of their kin because colonizers put a price on their skin. We shouldn't have to beg to survive and get rotten meat just to keep us alive. Our language was taken, they cut off our hair. If they could have, they'd have even cut off our air. They put us in their residential schools. They made us victims and played us for fools. Our history was hidden, our culture erased. Our leaders were vilified, our people disgraced. We started a ghost dance to give ourselves hope. They shot us like targets and hung us from ropes. We couldn't fight back, their weapons too great. But now we've awakened to see what they've done. We can't fight them with violence, no weapons, no guns. Our minds are our weapons. Our laws are the tools. We must fight for justice. We can't be made fools. We'll never trust the white man's decree. They'll always imprison us. We'll never be free. They'll deport us from our ancestral lands. Be careful when shaking the colonized hand. Our grandmothers were murdered, our kids taken away. I think I'll not let them do that today. Guys, I know that this is a radical poem. My heart was emotional when I wrote it. I have a lot of friends that are Anglo, and I do not mean this to be a racist thing, but I do believe that what I've written in these poems is true. I don't make any apologies, and that's all I'm going to say about that. Guys, I've been doing the show, it's actually coming on over 6 years now, and I've had the opportunity to meet some amazing authors and people, and some of them stand out more than others, and my guest today is one such author and hero. And David Carrillo wrote this book, Kiko, A Life Without Parole to Life with Purpose. And David, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you.
I am totally honored and thrilled, and I've got a copy of my book for you as well.
Oh, thank you very much.
So yeah, please take a look at that, and just really, I am so honored and to have you. I've always talked about people who walk the walk, and man, when we talk about walk the walk, when you're talking about society and our youth at large, they have a lot of challenges that I didn't have as a kid. There was not a big gang population in Colorado, in America, really, but not so much in Colorado, I guess. But when you grew up in Pueblo, Colorado.
For the most part, I actually grew up back and forth between LA and Pueblo.
In Pueblo.
Yeah, between California and Colorado. So I've experienced basically the both cultures, right? You had the gang culture out in California and the blooming gang culture here in Colorado. Mm-hmm. It was still in its infancy at that time.
Mm-hmm. And when you were growing up, your parents probably didn't have a really good experience with upbringing with their parents, and so your dad and your mom were they did the best they could.
Yeah.
And you just like boys do, we do mischievous things, and you ended up getting caught.
Yes.
And you were incarcerated at a very young age.
Yes. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that. How did you find yourself in the Department of Corrections? Was it an abrupt thing, or was it kind of a slow immersion, or how did it happen?
So it kind of evolved, right? I mean, as I began to study about the criminal justice system and adverse childhood experiences, there are a lot of statistics that show that by having experienced certain things, having been influenced by certain events, a child is more likely than not to find themselves within the criminal justice system. So I grew up in a home that was, highly toxic. My mother and father fought a lot. There was a lot of domestic violence, drug abuse, alcohol abuse. So these were the things that I grew up around: violence, drugs, alcohol. My father was a gang member himself. He was in and out of prisons, and so this was the influences that I had.
Mm-hmm.
And with the struggles that my mom and dad faced with one another, they ultimately divorced, they ultimately separated. And I found myself, me and my siblings found ourselves in foster care at an early age. And this was our introduction into the system, if you will. And so through that, it began to steamroll. I found myself in foster homes, group homes, juvenile detention centers, until finally, as a young man, I was involved in a gang-related murder and convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life without the possibility of parole.
And you did not pull the trigger.
I didn't pull the trigger, no.
Amen.
But my involvement in the gangs helped lead to them holding me accountable as the principal in the case.
Guilt by association.
Yes, guilt by association.
And you know, as I read the book, and you're so I love the way that you put this out. You didn't really give any names, or you didn't give specific details that were not really relevant to the case or to the story, but you made it so that you could so pick up on the book. I don't care where you open this book, what page you look at, you will find a story that you can relate to. For me, I saw myself as a young man, and I saw, times when I came to a crossroads and I had someone who slapped me and said, "Hey, dude, you know what? Wake up! You're on a bad path."
Yeah.
And not all young men and young women are really fortunate enough to have someone to come in and help them to get on that right path. And you found yourself in a California detention center at one time, and your dad actually broke you out. Basically broke you out.
Basically broke us out. Yeah, actually, I was sent back to California. I was in Colorado living with my grandparents. Got in trouble. They didn't want to deal with the behavior, and so we were sent back to California, me and my brother. And I was in this facility called McLaren Hall. And this was my first real, even though my dad was a gang member, my aunties and my uncles, a lot of my relatives were gang members, I really wasn't introduced formally to the gang life, if you will. But McLaren Hall, that introduced me to all of that, right? This was supposed to be a place to protect kids who were going through domestic issues. It was for social services, right? But this place was something else. It was full of a lot of kids that were just thrown away, angry, hostile, gang members. And so I was introduced to that world in McLaren Hall. Ended up bouncing around from group home to group home while I was in California. I found myself in a group home called Eagleston Youth Center in Baldwin, California, Baldwin Park, California, and then Long Beach Youth Home, where I ran away. I ran away from the facility, and because Long Beach was not too far from my hometown of San Pedro, and so I ran away to my hometown, and I'm living on the streets. And my father, who was in Colorado at the time, sent word to my family saying, "Hey, I want my boys home." And so my dad communicated with our social worker and set it up to where we were able to kind of escape. Right? We didn't have the courts had already ruled, deemed us permanent wards of the state of California.
Wow.
And so there was no. At least it seemed like there was no hope of going back home through the court systems. We were going to be permanently placed within these institutions out in California. And so, yeah, my dad paid this. I don't know if he paid him. I shouldn't say he paid him, because I actually don't know if he paid him anything. But he did communicate with the social worker to help me and my brother get on a bus and come back to Colorado.
When you got back to Colorado, there was a story where you talk about there was someone else that was an affiliate had done some things that were against the code.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the code later, but you were going to go to his house and you were going to have a retribution.
Oh yeah, we were going to go shoot the guy.
Going to shoot the guy.
Yeah, we were going to go shoot the guy. When I came back from California, I had gave name to a clique that my brother had started. And my brother had got a group of guys together, and then I came around and kind of organized them a little bit better, gave them a name, and we started to hang out. And I wanted my own family, right? I had felt abandoned, mean, tossed away in group homes, foster homes, all those. That's how I felt. I felt that I had been abandoned by my family, so I wanted to kind of create my own family. And so with this, we had this group of guys, and that was my family. And there was a belief about how we were supposed to carry ourselves. And when one of the guys broke that code of how we were supposed to be there for one another, actually, they had told on another friend of ours, another one of our family members, if you will, who had came to their aid. Right? They came to protect this guy, or these guys, and when they got in trouble, they threw our brother underneath the bus. And so that hurt me and angered me, and so I planned on going and actually shooting these boys for doing so.
And you were a kid?
Yeah, I was a kid. I was still about 16, 17 years old at the time.
And so, fast forward, you find yourself in the Department of Corrections, and you're 20 years old. And within 1 year, you go from level 3 to level 4 to level 5 in incarceration. And so you're from a standard prison to basically complete lockup. What's the term I'm trying to find?
Administrative segregation.
ADSEG, yeah, ADSEG.
Yeah, solitary confinement.
Solitary confinement. And man, that was a horrible place to be.
Oh yeah, it's a terrible place. It's a lonely place. You're locked in a concrete and steel cell by yourself with nobody. It's cold. You know, there's no natural light coming in. There's a little sliver of a window, and depending on where you're located within the facility, you may or may not get any kind of light whatsoever. And so it's a dark, dank place that's full of echoes, you know, of other men going through their suffering as well. You know, hitting the doors, hitting the tables. You can hear people talking, crying. You know, you can hear just the echoes of all of this stuff going on in this facility, and it can be quite maddening sometimes.
No doubt. And then you have on top of that the psychology and the games of the COs.
Oh yeah, yeah. The COs would they would play little mental games with us. Whether they was intentional or not, it was maddening at the same time, right? There would just little subtle things. I remember one particular event where these COs were having fun running around with the tray carts, because since we couldn't never leave our cells, we were locked down. They would come with these big steel carts stuffed with the trays, and they were running around the corner down the tier with them, and they would slam the tray cart into the wall, and it would be this explosion of
echo.
Of echo, and my cell's right there, and it would wake me up in the morning, startle me. And I remember getting really pissed off about that one day and saying, "Hey man, what's wrong with you people?" You know, and they made their little comments and stuff, and so our reaction then was to retaliate, and so began to kick on the doors and throw stuff. We trashed the tier. Made them come in to clean it up, because it was this back and forth kind of game where they would do something to poke at us, and we would respond to poke back at them, and it was kind of like almost like a chicken and the egg kind of thing, right? Who started what? It doesn't even matter.
Wow.
It was constant mind games that were going on within that administrative segregation.
And through all this, there's this buildup of emotion, this buildup of anger, this buildup of hostility that's inevitable. I mean, when you get treated like that, you're going to respond in like manner.
Yeah.
You know, and so as I was reading it, and and I would the code. There's the thing called the code, and when I talk about people who walk the walk, man, I see you. I mean, you were there as as a representative of the code, but there was always this community, this sense of almost like a big brother, throughout it all. You always believed in justice within the system, and within the code, and it just was very inspiring that even though you were still, of the mindset of incarcerated for life without parole, you still had this sense of community that was just so very admirable. You were in a place that the code was so strict that if someone flushed the toilet at 10:01, there was some serious repercussions.
Yeah, Centennial Correctional Facility. Yeah, there was a lot of old timers there who were very, very strict on this idea of respect, and Yeah, no, they're not even made up stories. There are true stories of individuals who, if they flushed their toilet at 10:01, they needed to be ready for defense at 6 o'clock in the morning when them doors cracked open because somebody was coming at them with a blade.
Man.
Yeah, and so yeah, guys have been stabbed and killed over disrespects like flushing your toilet too late at night.
You know, things we take for granted out here in society. It's just like, wow. You know, you could be killed for flushing a toilet.
Yeah.
People who crossed the line, they weren't treated kindly. I mean, there's a very strict code of conduct, and when you would deceive, or if you would um, pour, burn one of your associates, man, it could have some very serious ramifications.
Oh yeah, it could cost you your life.
Literally cost you your life.
Literally cost you your life. Yeah.
You know, there were times when you talked about a guy coming into a place where there was another Sally or another inmate, and they would hit him in the head with a padlock, and his head would just be caved open. And I mean, just the emotional gravity of it all was just so powerful and heartbreaking. You know, as I'm reading it, all I could think was, man, it's almost rigged. It's a system that you can't get out of.
It definitely seems that way, you know, and if you fall into that trap, you know, and I had gotten to the point to where I started to realize the power that I had within myself, you know, my own mindset, right? How I viewed the world, how I saw the world. I began to do a lot of reading. I read authors like Napoleon Hill and James Allen, Zig Ziglar and John C. Maxwell. I read Dr. Stephen Covey. My friend Walden Long, who was also incarcerated, he wrote a book called The Upside of Fear, his biography, and then wrote another book called The Power of Consistency. And I'm reading these things, and I'm starting to discover the power that I had within my own mind. And actually, I came to realize that was really the only true power and freedom I had, was my ability to choose how I was going to respond to any given situation. Because, you know, life throws circumstances at us that are beyond our control. And these circumstances, they come, and it's how you receive that, how you perceive it, and then how you choose to respond to it is what's going to ultimately dictate the result that you receive. Right? And so here I was sitting in prison with a natural life sentence. You know, I had no choice. I had no power in that situation, if you will. It was beyond my control. At least I thought it was beyond my control. Ad seg, the way that the facility was structured, the rules, those were things that were beyond my control. But what was within my control was how I chose to then spend my time, how I chose to respond to the things that were seemingly outside of my circle of influence, right? And so I began to take control of that. I began to work on myself. I had reached this point, and I write about it in my book, where I'm sitting in ADSEG for the third time, right? I'd actually been to solitary confinement on 3 separate occasions, and on the third trip there, I was hungry one night, and I remember, you know, hollering up to a friend of mine for some food. I needed something. If he had anything to eat, would he send me something down to eat? And he said yes. And so we would fish on the tier, right? We would make these lines, and we would send them out, throw them out underneath our doors, and we would snag up the other person's line with our line, and this is how we would be able to pass things to one another. And so he crushes up this granola bar for me one night, and, you know, sends it down, and I'm on my hands and knees, and I'm pulling this crushed up granola bar in, and it kind of dawns on me. I'm like, man, is this it? Is this the best this world has to offer? Because at that time, I was really well known in the system. I had built up a reputation. I was basically the top of the game, right? Because this is where
you were a general.
Yeah, this is where all of the big guys, the guys who were doing what they were doing were, right? This is where all the characters were at within the system. All the people I looked up to and admired, this is where they were at. And I'm thinking to myself, man, this is it. This is the best this world has to offer. And the love that I had for my friends and my family, I'm thinking to myself, well, this is the best that I have to offer them. Because if they're not right here in one of these cells with me, then they're really not about it, right? They're really not living what we're supposed to be living. And for the first time, that hit me in a way that didn't make sense. This is the legacy that I have. This is the kingdom that I have.
Is that all there is?
That's all there is, right?
Yeah.
Either death or this. Because in the reality, there was no winning anything. There was no building anything. It was all about reputation. It was all about the hustle. It was all about these things that kept us trapped in this system. And so with that shift, things began to change within me. And I mean, it wasn't easy. It wasn't a straightforward process, as I write about in my book. I mean, it took me years to get.
Man, you had so many ups and downs, man.
So many ups and downs. But the seed was planted, and I couldn't deny it. I couldn't change it. And so I began to educate myself, right? I began to read all those books I was mentioning to you. I began to sign up for college programs and stuff. I began to teach programs, all because I started to realize that although I couldn't control a lot of the circumstances around me, I can control how I received that stuff and how I responded to it, right? And so, the amazing thing that started to happen for me, and it's something that's written about. This isn't like The Secret. This isn't, manifestation. It kind of is, but it's more than that. When you start to think differently, you start to feel differently.
Yes.
Right? And when you start to feel differently about things, you start to do differently, right? When once upon a time something would happen, I would see it a certain way, I would feel a certain way about it, and I would do something, and then the natural consequence that would result from that.
But each time you did that, it gave you more time on your sentence.
Yeah, it gave me.
And
got me
when you worked with
at SEG, yeah, it built up my reputation, but all that reputation did was ensure that I remained in solitary confinement. So when I shifted the way that I started to think, when I shifted the way that I started to see all those things, I felt differently, and I started to do differently. And when I started to do differently, I started to get different things. And I looked at my friends, and while I was in there, my purpose, my meaning, then went from playing the general, the role in that game of locking us down and keeping our reputation intact, to I need to do something to help my friends overcome this stuff, my family overcome this stuff, so they can get out of this system and stay out of this system. That was my mission after that.
Yeah.
I joined 7 Habits of Highly Effective People on the Inside, which is a really great program written by
and that was an outside odd thing that you got that opportunity.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to even interrupt you.
Yeah, no, yeah, it was one of those things where something bad actually led to something good for me, right? It was a major riot in Buena Vista, a correctional facility, a prison I was in, and so this riot happens, and I end up getting transferred to territorial instead of being sent back to administrative segregation.
Surprised you?
Surprised me, surprised everybody. And so when I get to territorial, I'm still struggling with trying to make this change, this evolution within myself. So I didn't know how to, right? How do you change when all you've ever known is this world? I mean, since I was about 11 years old, I've been in and out of group homes, foster homes. I mean, one of the earliest memories of my father was visiting him in prison. So I mean, I was groomed basically for that life since I was a young boy. So how do you change when this is the only thing that you've known, right? And what do you change to? I mean, all of my idols were buried in them tombs.
Wow.
I had no frame of reference as far as a what, right? What do you change to?
And how?
And how, right? And the what and the how, and even the why.
The
right?
why, most important.
Most importantly, the why, because if I made any changes, what changed? I was still doing life without the possibility of parole. Nothing was going to change.
But they gave you an ultimatum at one time over at solitary confinement. They said one more infraction.
Oh yeah.
And that the way you led to that, that's another story in itself.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, the riot acts, right? I would be read the riot acts, and I would be threatened. If you do this again, this is it. This is your last chance, Carrillo. You're not going to get another chance. And it's like, okay. But I wasn't worried about their chances. I was more concerned about my chances.
Exactly.
Where my mind was, where my heart was, where I wanted to go with the things that I was starting to see and I was starting to believe. All my beliefs had shifted. I mean, I still believed in unity, but unity had a different meaning. It had a different purpose. Yeah, it was something different. I still believed in love and respect, but all of a sudden those words meant something else. They looked like something different from what that old lifestyle had led me to believe those words meant. And so I began to show it in different ways. And yeah, I got involved in the 7 Habits and started teaching that. Taught it for about 15 years on the inside. Started to pursue my education, earned an associate's degree. I earned a bachelor's of science in business administration with an emphasis in legal studies. I earned a master's in business administration, all while I was in prison. And I did this with the help of my beautiful sister, Christy, who helped me pay for a lot of that tuition. Yeah. I also earned several scholarship grants, and I ended up making friends with an attorney who I started doing consulting work for, and was able to pay for my master's degree on my own. So
that was so incredible, because you got pittance at at the prison, but working for him, he was able to pay you a full wage.
Yes, yeah, he was able to pay me a wage, and I was able. Well, it was kind of on the side, right? I wasn't supposed to do that. It was actually against the rules within DOC. You're not supposed to enter into business contracts with anybody, but I still did that. I was trying to pay for my education, and I needed to figure it out, because the Pell Grants had been taken away in the 90s. They hadn't come back yet. And so if you didn't have family with money, if you didn't have money yourself, you couldn't do any kind of educational program. And so I had to figure out a way to pay for that, because I wanted my education. And so I worked hard to get that, and ultimately received my master's degree, which led to another opportunity. And this is what I was saying, when you start to think differently, you start to feel differently, you start to do different, and you start to get different. And so I went from this guy that was constantly being placed in solitary confinement. I was kicked out of a facility with the nickname Gladiator School, a very violent institution, because they said I was too violent for it. And flash forward all these years later, after I started to make this change, and I was offered a job while I was in prison by a university, Adams State University, to become the first incarcerated college professor.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, I was an adjunct college professor while I was in prison. It was amazing that, that I went from the guy that they kicked out of Gladiator School to the guy they came to and said, hey, we want you to be the first. We want you to teach this. We want you to take on this role, and because we believe in you, we know that you can do a good thing with it. And so I took off with that.
And that didn't come easy, because you had to literally get permission to leave that lifestyle, the original gang or the prison lifestyle, and to turn a new leaf. And so it was a very challenging time for you to be able to, or to have to go to all of these upper generals and explain to them that you even though you had no possibility of parole, you still we chose to make a difference in your life and a change in your life that was going to make a positive impact rather than a negative impact.
Yeah, that's right. When I finally reached that point where I just could not do it anymore. I couldn't keep putting these men that I cared about, honestly, sincerely cared about, into situations that were going to lead them to where I myself no longer wanted to be. I didn't want to keep serving life without parole. I had it. I didn't want it. So why would I put somebody I cared about, that I professed to love, in a situation that's going to get them a life sentence if I didn't want it? I was tired of being in SEG. I was tired of being put in administrative segregation, solitary confinement. So how could I, as a man with character and integrity, put another man that I say that I love, that I care about, in a situation that's going to put this man in SEG, in solitary confinement, when I didn't want to be there no more? And I had done the things to put myself in those places. I'm not an innocent victim of any of this.
Accountability.
I'm 100% accountable for all of the things that I've done. I don't deny any of it, but I own it, right? But for me, having put myself in those situations and realizing that wasn't the life that I want, again, how could I, as a man of character and integrity, of true love for the people that I care about, put them in those situations, right? And so that had to stop, that had to change.
And you had to face a lot of challenges. I mean, geez, even new inmates would come in, and at first you would I don't know if it's a different time, but there was a time when you would go and shake every one of their hands.
Yeah, after I wrote the letters and I was done, the thing about walking away from the gang lifestyle, even though I didn't turn states, I didn't cross anybody out to do so. I wrote everybody and told everybody I was done. I got the blessings for that. But when I was in that life, obviously I developed enemies because there were people within my own who I had made check in, I had made bow down, I had made feel a certain kind of way, right? I punished, I hit these guys, I did things to them. And so now I'm done, and here's an opportunity to attack me. And even the ones that were, there were some of those individuals who I never had issues with. Their beliefs were, oh, he's a dropout and this and that, and so you would get whispers, right? You'd get whispers and stuff, and so when these guys would pull up onto the yard, and I would hear that they would, whisper under their breath about, oh, yeah, he's a dropout and this and that. So I wanted to let them know, I'm still who I am. I'm not just this little easy pushover. You're not going to just punk me out. So I would walk up to these guys and I would make them shake my hand just to let them know. Don't get it twisted. Even though I let go of that label, I'm still highly capable, right? And they would shake my hand, but the thing was, I had my ego, I still had my pride, and I had to work through that. And I finally got to a point where I was able to let that go too. I stopped forcing these guys to shake my hand. I didn't want to be part of that world anymore. So why was I still putting myself out there like that, right? And so I finally got to a point where I stopped doing that because I cared about these guys. I respect. I didn't want to put them in a position, And then by doing that, I was putting myself in those spotlights as well. And yeah, so I stopped doing that in order to be able to truly break away from that lifestyle in order to pursue my new mission in life, which was not just to educate myself, but to educate others, those who were ready to try to make changes in their lives. I worked very, very hard at helping them get through the struggles they were going through to make the changes in their lives that they needed to make.
Wow. Hey guys, if you're just joining us, you are watching KUHS The Stream, and this is the Weekend Boost, and I'm your host, Paul Lane. Today we are talking to author David Carrillo Kiko, a life without, from life without parole to life with purpose. David Carrillo spent 31 years in prison, and he exhausted every possible appeal, and he had looked for clemency and wasn't able to get clemency. Governor Hickenlooper had some restrictions, and then after it's all said and done, you find out that your letter was never even approved, man. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I mean, the devastation that you had to have felt and the hopelessness, knowing that there was everything had been tried and there was no more hope. But yet you still kept fighting for good, man.
Yeah, I still kept pushing forward. Again, because circumstances might have been out of my control, but what was in my control was my ability to choose how I was going to respond to that.
Right now.
Yeah, right now, right here, right then and there. It seemed like my destiny was to die in prison. That I had basically kind of come to terms. I never completely gave up on the hope that something would change for me, but I was kind of, okay with that reality because I had a purpose and a mission. I had a purpose and a mission to help elevate those who wanted to be helped and elevated, right?
And so everybody saw that.
Yeah, they saw it.
I mean, even the guards, even the DOC, the warden even saw that.
Yeah.
And so as you started developing this character, well, the character was always there, but your intention changed. And not only did your fellow inmates see that, but the warden and the DOC, the COs, they all at one time were afraid of you, man. I mean, they even would come and say, "Hey, man, don't start nothing, man." And yet they saw this
change.
Absolute change.
Yeah, they got to watch it. They watched it. A few of them took some leaps of faith with me. I got to be grateful and thankful to a few of those bigwigs, as I call them, right? The powers that could have changed the trajectory of my life inside of prison. I mean, they had the power to slam me down if they wanted to, but they took that leap of faith with me, and they stepped back and they just watched me. They went ahead and It's like, all right, we're going to let you move and let's see what you do. And I did, you know. My old brethren, right? My old brothers, a lot of them, they stepped back and they were like, okay, let's see what you're gonna do. And everybody started to see that I was sincere. I wasn't.
It wasn't lip service.
It wasn't lip service. I wasn't one of those guys that said, hey, I'm done with this. I want to change, and then continued on doing the same old stuff. I mean, again,
for drugs.
Yeah.
Talk about. I mean, at one time you were drug free, and then you said, it's screw it, man. I might as well.
Yeah, I mean, I grew, you know, I had a certain idea about hardcore drugs, right? When it came to hardcore drugs, cocaine, heroin, stuff like that, I grew up around that, you know, and so I had a view, a perspective on the drugs, and I didn't want them for myself. I refused to do them for years, and then I lost my direct appeal, and I kind of gave up on life for a moment, and I started getting high. I started using heroin. I started using coke. I was popping pills. I mean, anything I could take to help me cope with life.
Yeah.
You know, life without parole. You know, here I am in this world that's surrounded by hopelessness, hate, fear. This was our existence, and you know, how was I going to cope with that? And I leaned on drugs for a while, and yeah, and it carried me forward for quite some time using the drugs while I was inside.
And the way that you were, I don't want to say influenced, but the way you made the decision to not take drugs anymore was you had an associate come back and he was clean. He was completely clean, and you saw that and you said, hey, as long as you're here, no drugs.
Well, yeah, he was struggling. Well, actually, what it was is he was struggling. So one of my old brethren, you know, he was from my old clique. He had actually showed up to Territorial, and they put him in my cell with me, and he was happy to see me. You know, he wasn't all, oh, you drop out. No, he was actually happy to be in the cell with me, and so I'm still getting high at this point, even though I had walked away from the gangs, and I'm trying to do good. I'm starting to teach 7 habits. I still had that drug problem, and so I remember telling him, I'm like, oh man, it's nice to see you, bro. Get comfortable, you know. Let me hook you up. You know, gave him food. Soap, made sure he was okay, and then I went to a friend of mine who was getting methadone, and so I went and bought a dose of methadone from him, and I come back up with the methadone, and I tell my friend, I said, hey bro, you know, let's get high, let's party, and he looked at me with this sincerity, and he says, hey bro, this is what keeps bringing me back.
Whoa!
And when he told me that hit me deep, because I walked away from the gangs because I didn't want to keep putting my people in places I didn't want to be in.
Wow.
And it didn't dawn on me until that moment that the drugs was the same thing. Okay, yeah, I'm not living the gang lifestyle anymore, but I'm still living the drug lifestyle. But the drug lifestyle is still putting in people in prison. It's still putting people in solitary. It's still putting people in the grave. And this is a dude I care about. How am I going to continue to serve drugs, do drugs, make it seem like it's okay when it's doing the exact same thing as that lifestyle was? And so,
and you're living this example, and so this turmoil's going on inside you.
Yeah, it's going on inside of me. And so I told him, I said, all right, bro, I said, I'm going to tell you, as long as you're here with me, if you don't get high, I won't get high.
Damn.
I took that dose down, and now I understand heroin, opiates, that was my drug of choice. So I took this vial of methadone back down to my Connect, gave it back to him, and said, I'm done, bro. And I came back up, and I haven't touched drugs since. Yeah, and this was over 15 years ago now.
Wow.
So yeah, I haven't even had the urge to get high.
And you know, I in my family, we've had people die of HIV. We've had people die of drug overdoses. You know, my uncle was found murdered, shot 4 times in the back of the head in 1980. And so, you know, coming from a poor community, you know, I had a single mom. I saw that. You know, I knew heroin addicts. I've had friends that were arrested. You know, I went to go see my brother-in-law. The U.S. Postal Service was taking him away in handcuffs, man, selling a freaking kilo of cocaine. You know, so as I'm reading your story, I could connect to it. I could so relate to so many things, the way you said them and the way you explained them. And it's like, wow, man, I wish that my Uncle Victor could have had an expert, be exposed to something so revelatory. So, I mean, just seeing that this is what brings me back in here. Hearing those words,
Yeah.
man, I mean, they had to resonate deeply.
Oh yeah, it resonated deeply with me, and so from that point forward, yeah, I've been drug free. I won't even give any kind of credence to them. You know, no,
Nice.
there's no excuse. There's no rationalizing it. It destroys. You know,
Yep.
the drugs destroy. They destroy our people. They destroy all the people I love, and I don't like them. I don't want them around me.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, when I talk about, often I talk about how George W. Bush brought in cocaine into the United States and dropped it off on corners, literally. And then they skewed the laws so that crack cocaine would have 500 times or 5 times the charge of powdered cocaine for the same drug. And so mass incarceration became the norm. And the people they were mass incarcerating were melanated people. And so, you know, and I'm not trying to say that they're innocent, you know, by any means, but you know, I've said it before, I'll say it again. Mass incarceration and mass deportation are both perpetrated, supported, and implemented by white supremacy, as well as private prisons. And so I think that there's another dynamic that wasn't explained in the book, but you know, just from the perspective I've had, you know, I have to say that there's a lot of perpetuity. They by they, I don't know what I mean by they, but the system makes it so that you are almost funneled into this lifestyle if you're not very watchful, if you don't have outside influence, positive, you know, input from someone who's got some good insight, you know.
Sure. Yeah. You know, and I work to try to enlighten those, and not to enlighten as far as providing some sort of justification or rationalization, but providing insight into the fact that, you know what, okay, all these things are true, right? The statistics show that by having grown up with drugs and alcohol, right, that you are so much more likely to find yourself within the criminal justice system. If you grew up around violence, if your parents were divorced, if your parents were incarcerated, you have a more than a greater chance than somebody who hasn't experienced those kinds of things to find yourself in the criminal justice system. This is true. There's statistics that show that stuff. But then once you become aware, and this is where I get to talking about taking control of how you see things, right? How you see the life. Yes, all of those things can be true, but here's what is also true. None of those things are 100%. Right? Not a single one of those things is a 100% guarantee that you're going to end up in the criminal justice system. Not one of those things, or all of those things combined, is a 100% guarantee that you're going to do something that's going to lead you into those places, right? And so because of that, once you start to realize that you have that power to control how you choose to respond to even the worst of scenarios in your life, now all of a sudden that funnel means absolutely nothing.
Wow, thank you. You're right. You're right. When you have an opportunity to be exposed to someone like Zig Ziglar or someone, you know, like Stephen Covey, depending on how you read it, you know, you have to read it with some desire, with some enthusiasm.
Yes.
But once you start reading and understanding these thoughts, then all of a sudden these new worlds of opportunity start opening up to you.
They definitely start opening up to you. You know, Covey says a habit is the intersection between desire, skill, and knowledge, right? So the key one there is that desire. You have to have that want, and once you have that want to grow, you want that want for something different, for something greater. Now it's about figuring out how, right? And that's what 7 Habits did for me. It gave me kind of a roadmap for that. You know, habit 1, be proactive. Habit 2, begin with the end in mind, right? The what. All of a sudden now I'm thinking about legacy and how I'm going to establish this legacy. What does this legacy even look like, right? And so I wanted it though, you know, because I was tired of being a contributor to that funnel for the people I cared about going into that system, right?
Yes.
And so with that desire came this understanding, and I began to work towards developing my mindset. And I shifted my mindset, my paradigm, as Covey calls it. I shifted my paradigm, and I shifted the way that I felt. I shifted the way that I started doing things, and man, the door literally opened up for me. I mean, I'm here now sitting with you, and I had a life without parole sentence. And for those who don't understand what that means, in Colorado, when you're sentenced to life without the possibility of parole, you are therefore going to die in prison. Clemency is not a promise.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a guarantee.
It's almost not a possibility.
It's almost not a possibility. It's a rare thing, actually. Some people have been getting granted clemency, but we're talking 4 or 5 people out of 20,000 people incarcerated. You know what I mean? So this isn't a situation where things are just opening up for you. This is a very rare thing, and with that, I got that. Right? I was able to get that, and that happened for me. And it all came because I began to start to change the way that I thought. I changed the way that I felt. I changed the things that I did, and here I sit.
When you were, exhausting every possibility for an appeal, it had gotten to a point where there was no hope. Yeah. And as I mentioned earlier, Hickenlooper was the governor, and I learned so much from your book. I mean, the governor writes out parameters for the possibility of clemency. And you didn't qualify. You didn't meet your letter was end up.
Right. Yeah. I was on probation when I caught this case, and under Hickenlooper, if you were on probation or parole when you caught the case you were seeking clemency for, you were ineligible. But they did have a waiver, right? You couldn't ask for a waiver of this ineligibility. And one of the requirements one of the waiver criteria was what they call disparagement in sentencing.
Yes.
And I felt that I had fit that because out of 8 of us that were indicted in this case, I was at the time the only one still doing life without the possibility of parole. I wasn't the only one.
The trigger man was not.
Yeah, the trigger man admitted to it. He was given 35 years for second-degree murder. Me and my co-defendant, a really good dear friend of mine, we went to trial together, and both of us were given life without parole sentences. But I was 19 at the time, and my co-defendant was 16. Jeez. And so because of that, Miller v. Alabama, which was the Supreme Court case that came out saying that it was unconstitutional to have a mandatory sentencing scheme of life without the possibility of parole, which Colorado had. And so they had to re-sentence him. So he was resentenced to 40 to life, and I was the only one now doing natural life out of 8 of us who were originally indicted in the case. So I figured this is disparagement of sentencing. And so I put in my application to Hickenlooper for it, and it comes around where the letters are starting to come in of the denials, right? All these guys had put in this clemency packets, hoping Hickenlooper was going to let them go. Thinking Hickenlooper, because he was a liberal, he was going to let everybody go. But no, that wasn't Hickenlooper's plans. That wasn't who he was. And so all these letters started coming in every day.
Everybody would get a letter.
Whoever applied, when their time came, I would hear the names over the loudspeaker in the pods. So-and-so report to the sergeant's office for legal mail.
And they didn't get the regular mail. This legal mail was a separate delivery.
Yeah, it was a separate delivery. And so at that time, when we heard a name called, it was more likely than not this was a denial letter. So I'm pacing the tier every day, Monday through Friday, every time, during that mail time. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm waiting for my name to be called, with a denial, and then it doesn't come. And then December rolls around, and the governor issues out the ones that he did grant clemency to, and my name's not on this list either. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? And so I reach out to the administration and the associate warden again, because by this time my reputation had shifted. I had a lot of support, and the associate warden, he goes and he finds this 3-year-old letter that I never received, saying that I was denied. And what was really kind of screwy about that letter was it says in there, waivers are for unique situations like disparagement and sentencing. And I'm like,
that's me.
That's me. What heck?
Man.
And so it was kind of
and he's no longer the governor.
He's no longer the governor. He issued his clemencies as he was leaving office. And so then comes Polis, and Polis rewrites his parameters, and he took out that ineligibility. So it was no longer an ineligibility if you were on probation or parole when you caught the crime in which you were seeking clemency.
So that opened a
That
possibility.
opened up a possibility for me, and so I applied under POLIS because now I'm eligible. Got some support. Wonderful attorney by the name of Heidi Tripp came and supported me through the help of my sister, and yeah, no one, next thing you know, I'm getting called into my case manager's office, and
Damn. I'm gonna tell you, man. I read all of my books. As I tell you guys, I read all of my books out loud. This is a 375-page book. It went like it was a 20-page book, man. When you got to the page where you got your clemency, well, when you had your hearing, it was on video, and
yeah.
and I don't want to give too much away, but I will say this, man. I bawled like a baby, bro. I mean, there's so many times that this book is so emotionally bounding. I mean, I'm like, man, my wife was, I've had her Kleenex left and right, man, because the things that you dealt with when you faced the family of the man that was killed. That was, I mean, you talk about a humility, where you literally said, man, I don't care if they want to hit me, if they want to kill me, I'm not going to defend myself. I'm going to sit here and take it. Talk about manning up. And then when they finally saw you and you lost it, you just emotionally broke down.
Yeah.
The accountability, the reality, the impact, all of these emotions and all of these things hit you at one time. And as I'm reading the book, my head's even shaking right now. Just, bro, I just can't imagine being there, and the mother and father eventually, right there saying, I forgive you.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that at all. I didn't go in there with that either. I just wanted to give them me,
Yes.
I wanted to let them know how sorry I was, that I hadn't done this time and dismissed their son as if,
you didn't blame anybody?
I didn't blame anybody. I didn't blame my youth. I didn't blame my, my upbringing with all the violence and the drug abuse and everything else. I didn't blame any of that. That had nothing to do with it. I was 100% sincerely sorry for what we had done. And if I could take it back, without
right
hesitation, without hesitation.
And
I wanted them to know that, and they saw the sincerity in my heart.
Yes. When you talked about that, and then the daughters talked about, you took our big brother away from us. We didn't even get to meet him. Oh man, it was.
Oh yeah.
I could so relate to that, and I could understand the emotional roller coaster that you must have been going through, and
the realization of the impact that we had.
The impact, yes.
As a young kid, you don't realize just how deep that stuff goes.
Yes.
And I was able to see and learn from these wonderful people just how much that act that night changed.
Their son died. The part of their life died.
Their brother.
Their brother. Someone's husband, or whatever the case may be, and to get to a point during your incarceration where you are that mature, or that that realization hits you, that has to be probably as liberating as being freed. Just because that burden that was holding you back, and that denial of it's a system, like you at one point blamed your grandparents for leaving you, for abandoning you.
I blamed everybody. I blamed the world. I blamed the system. I blamed the streets. I blamed my parents. I blamed my grandparents. I blamed my aunties, my uncle. I blamed everybody. It was everybody else's fault but mine. And then I took ownership, and that's when I became free. Is when I was able to take full ownership of all of that, acknowledge it, and then offer myself up to my victim's family as a sincere offering. And the forgiveness that they gave me, that pushed me even further towards my ultimate mission in helping others find that change that they need to be able to come home and be successful for themselves and for their families.
Man, I mean it. A lot of times I'll get a book and I'll say, this book needs to be a movie. Man, where can people get your book?
On Amazon or Barnes & Noble.
Guys, take a ride to Barnes & Noble. Don't order from Amazon. Don't stay off of Amazon till after the Black Friday. But guys, get this book. Even if you get it from Amazon, get this book. You will not regret it. You will not be able to put this down, and you'll want to share it with all your friends. I mean it. I've been talking to so many of my friends and family about this book and how it's impacted my perspective. I mean, everything from the way I think about a young person going into being incarcerated to what you would do while you were there, to how you can impact the lives of others. Even with a life without parole, you can still make a positive impact. And you did it, man. You manned up and you walked the walk, and you know, I mean, when you were able to face those people and just be a man about it. I just have so much respect for that. I mean it. I called you on the phone and said, man, dude, I admit I was just wiping tears away because I was just so emotional about how, when you saw them, you just broke down, and you just, with all sincerity and humility and something it's a very hard thing for people to find,
Yeah.
But you did it, and you came out, and in the end, when like I said, you had exhausted, and I'm sorry, forgive me for bouncing around, but just so many things to talk about. When you finally did get your clemency, you were so scared because you knew you were going for this clemency hearing, which was unheard of. There was no such thing.
Or the clemency interview.
Interview, yes.
Yeah, clemency interview. We'd never heard of that before. And so I had no idea what to expect. I had no idea what they were going to ask me. It was petrifying.
One thing you say could
ruin the whole thing. I could, if I sounded insincere, even, this could take these people who have this power and turn them against me on this. And,
one word, one sentence.
One word, one sentence, one statement.
One smirk, one attitude,
anything. And turned out my case manager had the same anxieties as I did.
Yeah, she didn't sleep all night the night before.
Yeah, she didn't sleep all night the night before. Yeah, and so that was petrifying. But
listen to this. I opened right to the page.
Okay.
Mr. I'm sure she said Carrillo.
Yeah.
Mr. Carrillo, she said, I'm from the governor's office, and we wanted to call to inform you that the governor has granted your petition for clemency. You will be released from prison on January 31st, 2024. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, that was something. I mean, my head was swimming with all kinds of emotions and everything, and I really couldn't think of a question until I finally asked, do I need to put in a parole plan? That was the only question I could think of.
Guys, listen to this. I hold an associate's degree in paralegal studies, a master's in business administration. I've gained hands-on experience as a plumber, earned a certification as a master K9 trainer, and amassed valuable teaching experience in both 7 Habits and Power of Consistency, as well as teaching courses in business and economics. I am truly prepared and eager to hit the ground running. Guys, we're out of time, man. This hour has gone so fast, David. I'm just so honored and humbled to have you on my show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I have a slogan that I've always say at the end of every show, and I sincerely mean it today. Everybody's looking for a hero, and if you can't find one, man, you've been a hero. You're my hero, man. I have so much respect and admiration for you. I wish you the most success, prosperity, abundance in everything you do, my friend.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your inspiration.
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah.
Guys, Mr. International's on deck. Please stay tuned. KUHS has good things in store for you. Stay tuned. See you in 2 weeks. There's so many things I wanted to say, man.